Hey, good day to you. Hey, this is Stan Perchowski, and this is the Ask Stan show every Thursday at 12 o'clock, 30 minutes early today. I announced on the radio today that I would do it at 11:30 instead of 12. I have a previous commitment that I'm going to be doing at noon today, so I'm not able to do it on time. But hey, if you're around and you're listening and you want to ask a question, you know how to do it. Just chime in. We'll be glad to talk about it. Um, if not, I just want to bring up a couple of things that are coming up. Hey, I've got a webinar coming up Thursday, a week from today, which is May the 14th. This is one you're going to want to come to because I'm talking about a special topic. You often hear me talk about going to the nursing home or long-term health care and getting stuck with all those and losing everything that you own because you folks often ask me that question. It is by far the question that is the most asked or frequently asked questions, I guess you could call it. It's the one I get the most of. So you guys bring it up. So I've made this special webinar. It's called How to Keep from Going Broke in the Nursing Home. So next Thursday, May the 14th, going to do two of them. Going to do one at noon. We're going to do one at 6 p.m. I'll do them live. All you need to do is come on my Facebook page, go to my website, call me or send me an email, and we'll send you the link. All you got to do is click on it, and you can attend. And that's going to be a good one. Now, as far as today goes, the Ask Stan show, I want to go over a thing or two along those same lines because it's been brought up. Somebody came in to me this week, and although I don't think it was exactly a question to respond to, but it was a scenario that I'd like to share because I think it's a misunderstanding. And somebody was worried about losing everything to the nursing home, and so they took the position that, well, I'll just let them take everything I have, and then when I'm broke, they'll have to take care of me. I mean, they won't be able to turn me loose, right? Well, sadly mistaken, the answer to that is no. It's unfortunate, but the answer is no. That is not a very good strategy. So, in Tennessee, let me back up a little bit. Out of 50 states in the country, there's 30 of them, and a couple of our possessions too, that have what we call filial responsibility statutes. Now, what those mean, you're going to love this. I mean, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but if you go into the nursing home and you become broke and you can't pay the nursing home for the cost, here in Tennessee, we have laws where they can go after and enforce your relatives to pay for your care. And if you look at the statute, it defines relatives as four things: spouse, children, guardians, or parents. So if you go to the nursing home and can't pay and you go broke, the nursing home, or not nursing home, Medicaid can go after your children and make them pay. Now, how does that grab you? Okay, so the guy that came in earlier and said, well, I'll just let them take everything I have, and once it's gone, it's gone. They have to take care of me. No, not exactly. They do have to take care of you, but they're going to get paid for it. Here in Tennessee, there's the Medicaid Act. Well, the federal act is the Medicaid Act. Tennessee has their TennCare version of Medicaid. But we also have something in Tennessee called the Medicaid Assistance Act. Now, that's the assistance that they're talking about. Now, if we go socialism, like, if we're watching the election and a lot of people say, hey, we need to be social government and stuff. I mean, one of the problems with that is all that socialist stuff has to be paid for, and this is how they're going to do it. If you go to any line item on any state's budget, I'd venture to say all 50 states, the two things that at the top, the two biggest line items on a state's budget is Medicaid and education. What that means is people are going to want to get paid. I mean, Medicaid's going to want to get reimbursed for this, and they don't have to pass the law here in Tennessee. They've already got it. It's on the books, and it's enforceable. Now, how much they enforce it, I don't know, but it's there. It kind of reminds me of the old seatbelt law. Remember when that came out? Remember when the seatbelt law came out? Everybody was opposed to it. I mean, I was. I have no problem with seatbelts. I like to wear them. I think it's a good idea. But I sure don't like to be told I have to wear them. Well, they come out and they said, you know what, we're going to pass this law, but we're not going to pull anybody over. We're not going to pull anybody over in children just not wearing a seatbelt. I mean, we just promised we won't do that. Well, that was enough for them to get the law passed. Well, the ink barely dried on it before, I think it was less than 6 months, they started pulling people over for just seatbelt. I mean, that's the way it works. So these books are on the in Tennessee. If you don't believe me, you can look it up. It's Title 71, Chapter 5, Section 115. There's a responsibility, the financial responsibility of your children for your health care. So the people I'm trying to address really on this is not the person that may go into the parents that go into health care and rack up a bill. I mean, them, of course. Think of your children. You don't want them to be responsible for paying your bill. But I'm also trying to appeal to the children to get their parents on board with this, because you don't want to go broke because you got to get stuck paying for your parents. Now, here's another thing about those filial responsibility laws, and you're going to love this. You're just going to love it. If you're a child, there are 2 defenses. Well, maybe 3 defenses. There's 3 defenses that you can raise so that you don't have to pay for your mom and dad's health care and go broke yourself. One of them is if you're already broke. If you're indigent and can't pay, okay, that's a defense. They're not going to make you pay. I mean, not really a defense. It's just sort of a fact of life. I mean, if you can't pay for them, then you can't pay for them. But the other 2 things are actual defenses. And like I said, you're going to love these. One of them is if there is a record of abuse of the parents on you as a child. So if they've abused you as a child, you don't have to pay for their health care. The other one is if your parents have abandoned you, you don't get stuck paying for their health care. Those are the only 2 defenses that the law has. So I don't know what to say about that. I mean, please don't get me wrong. That doesn't mean if you don't want your children to have to pay your health care, don't start beating them. Okay, that's not what that's saying. Or don't leave them. I just think that's a very narrow range of defenses. But anyway, there you have it. I'm going to talk about that a lot on my Thursday webinar. My Thursday webinar on the 14th, how not to go broke in the nursing home. I'm going to touch on the Filial Responsibility Act and a little bit, because it's a scary thought. A lot of people don't know that. They think, well, my debts can't pass to my children. Well, that's true. If you die and you go into probate and you have a debt, they don't have to pay it. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a special creditor, which is Medicaid. And so they've created the Medicaid Assistance Act, which allows them by law to sue your children for what you owe the nursing home. I mean, that really sucks. So why not take advantage of these asset protection, these asset protection trusts that I put together to protect your assets from the nursing home? Okay, we can do that. So this is another reason why to do it. So anybody want to post a question? I don't see any just yet. Trying to think of anything that's come up over the week. It's been kind of a hectic week. Oh, I know what it was. This morning when I was talking on the radio, we were talking about the common misconceptions of a living trust. And, a lot of people think it's too expensive. Well, it's not. I mean, I talk about this in all my seminars. When you talk about the expense of a living trust, you sort of have to compare it a certain way. Well, how do you compare it? Well, you compare it to the cost of probate, or I like to say the cost of not having the living trust. So if you don't have the living trust, then by definition, you go through probate. So the cost of probate can be substantial. But it doesn't come out of your pocket, of course. It comes out of your heirs. It comes out of your estate and doesn't go to your heirs. But a living trust is a cost that comes out of your pocket. So, you got to hire somebody like me to draft the thing for you during life. But if you do a comparison of the 2, the cost of probate far, far exceeds the cost of the living trust up front. So cost is, if you think you'd like to have a living trust and you're not doing it because you think it's too expensive, it's a misconception. Don't make the decision based on that. Come talk to me and we'll talk about the cost. And I can show you that it's much cheaper to have a living trust. Plus, you get the probate avoidance, right? Another question some people have brought up is, do I have to pay a trustee? Well, not really, because on most living trusts, you're the trustee. And you're not going to pay yourself to do it, so it's not necessary. However, There are some people that hire professional trustees. I mean, every bank has a trust department, and they're entitled to either a small percentage of the trust assets, or you can pay them a reasonable fee on an hourly basis. It's not very much. Sometimes when we have people that only have one children or no children, we name a professional trustee, and it's not expensive. It's not as expensive as you might think. The other question I talked about on the radio was misconceptions. People think a trust has to have its own tax return and a tax number. Not true at all. I mean, that's completely wrong. It is the technical term is when you have a living trust, it's called a grantor's trust, or sometimes I call it tax neutral. But what the IRS does, the IRS considers a living trust a non-event. What does that mean? It's a non-event to them because you can revoke it at any time, thus the name Revocable Living Trust. So the only time they require a tax ID number and its own tax return is if the trust lives on after your death. And sometimes we do that, and that's no big deal either. I mean, you just get a EIN number for it and a 1041. But again, you really only need a tax return for a trust if it generates enough income to trigger filing the return, which is usually not the case. I mean, people that use it for tax shelters, maybe so, but not necessarily. So that's a misnomer. What was some of the other misnomers? I think one of them was, one of the misnomers, and I know we've heard this a million times, and I've brought it up many times, is that I don't have a very big estate, so what do I need a living trust for? Well, that's a common one, but I don't think the size of your estate should ever be the decision-making, that a deal breaker for not having one. Because, if you're a younger couple, if you're a younger person, you're in the 30s, 40s, even 50s, I mean, your estate's only going to grow. I mean, that's the theory, right? It's going to get better as life goes on. You may have children, how you want to distribute it. There's a lot of advantages to having a living trust, even if you don't have a lot. But if you have something to give to people, you have a little more control over how to give it to them. Again, we talked about avoiding the probate costs. So sometimes if I'm backed into a corner and somebody says, I don't have enough of an estate to have a living trust. I mean, I can think of many reasons why you should have one, but if the only single reason I can think of, if you're in a situation where the only one I can come up with is probate avoidance, well, I think that's enough of one, because anything is better than having your property go to the Tennessee Department of Unclaimed Property, because if it goes there, it's going to sit there for 10 years, and then it's going to finally escheat to the state of Tennessee. And I mean, who wants that if you can do something other than that? So, even if you have no place for it to go, some people don't have children, they have nobody to give it to. Well, pick an organization you're passionate about. If you're a vet, you got the Wounded Warrior Foundation. If you're a pet person, Humane Association, stuff like that. Miss Tammy and I are active with the theater, so we leave it to the nonprofit, the theater, stuff like that. If you're passionate about something, leave it to somebody. Anything is better than the Department of Unclaimed Property. So, let's see if I got any questions. Don't see any. That's about 15 minutes. Usually kind of like to keep these capped at 15 minutes. If you have a question, you know what to do. Phone it in, email it in, Facebook it in. I'll keep it and we'll put it up on the Ask Dan Show next Thursday. Next Thursday will be at noon. We won't do it early. I'm early today because I've got something going on at 12 o'clock that I have to do. Again, let me remind you of next Thursday's webinar. We're still webinars. We can't do the in-person events just yet, so we have to do the next best thing. But it's a webinar. It's called How Not to Go Broke in the Nursing Home. I'm going to talk about these income-only asset protection trusts, a way to, I kind of call it Medicaid planning and why you need it. You do need it, trust me. And how to keep the nursing home from getting all your assets. Because remember, when I say nursing home, of course I mean Medicaid, not necessarily the nursing home themselves. But this is how to protect your assets so you don't lose everything. The reason I'm doing this specific subject webinar is because you folks have brought it up to me. This is the most frequently asked question I get. How do I keep a long-term healthcare industry from getting everything I own? Well, Thursday's webinar, doing two of them, one at noon, one at 6 p.m. I'm going to do them live. That's what I'm going to talk about. And it's going to be a real eye-opener because I get into some of these filial responsibility rules that can make your children pay for you, stuff like that. So there's ways to prevent every bit of that. But you got to act now. We've got some time considerations to build in there. We've got that 5-year rule. We've got stuff to deal with, a few hoops to jump through, but you can protect every bit of what you own from long-term health care. Just got to plan. That's the word planning, right? If you wait till the last minute, then we go into crisis planning, which is completely different than pre-crisis planning. Crisis planning is just figuring out ways we can spend the money on stuff now, a certain debt payoff, prepaid funerals, stuff like that. We're certainly limited in what we can do in crisis planning. So join in next Thursday. I'll have the radio show at 8:30 in the morning. I'll have Ask Stan at 12 noon. Well, no, next Thursday, I guess I'll be a little earlier because I'm having this webinar I'm telling you about at 12 noon. So next Thursday, I'll have it at 11:30 as well. And then we'll have the two Don't Go Broke in the Nursing Home webinars, one at 12 noon, one at 6 p.m. Be there. You'll be glad you did. All right, we'll see you next Thursday on the Ask Stan Show.